It was in 70 that he got an opportunity to visit Japan. I believe in the American pavilion, he happened to see the liquid spices displayed there, which fascinated him. My dad used to want me to go to the fields, see the distillation.
What was the business like in the late 80s?
When I joined the business, we were about 6-7 crores in turnover. So I was coming into a business which was a well-laid foundation was there.
What exactly is an oleoresin?
If you take black pepper and just crush in your hand, you get an aroma, which is this product.
Brain center of the whole enterprise is
Kerala.
R&D aspect of things. How much research and development is central to your success?
And for us to be known in the world, we had to have some unique development that was happening in the lab. So we were consistently being seen in international magazines in terms of technology, developments, and process capabilities.
You said this thing took you 6 years to crack. Why aren't you giving up by year 3? So what aspects about doing business in Kerala, people, society, all of those things, what part of that mix helped Synthite grow?
I think Kerala should pursue knowledge-based industries. All of our research and development and products which are highly technical in nature is still processed in Kerala.
So clearly the biggest strength here is human capital.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we reach maximum potential in industry academia collab? What does academia need to do? Can the government play some sort of a role?
There are two things that the industry should be doing. If you identify a problem, be willing to give it, not expecting a solution sometimes. But that culture starts to happen. Maybe we should allow that opportunity to happen.
It could be a solution to a problem you don't have right now.
Absolutely.
Welcome to episode 2 of Backwaters and Boardrooms, a podcast by KSIDC, whose main goal is to showcase Kerala's most innovative and globally competitive industries. The intention behind this podcast is twofold. One is to provide an authentic insider's view to investors seeking to grow their businesses in Kerala, and 2, to spark young Keralites into becoming entrepreneurs and future business leaders of tomorrow. Before we meet today's guest, let me take you back 2 millennia. About 2000 years ago, spices and other luxury items shipped out of Kerala used to dominate Roman markets, to the extent that the naturalist Pliny the Elder complained that products from India were draining the Roman treasury. How fascinating is it that 2000 years later, Kerala is still spicing up the globe, but this time it's doing it through value-added spices. Now, the company at the forefront of this story is a company called Synthite, which has a 4,000 crore turnover and ships to more than 80 countries across the globe. Let me welcome Aju Jacob to episode 2 of Backwaters and Boardrooms.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So let's begin where every great Kerala business story starts, with an idea, an experiment, and the courage to scale up globally. So let's start. Tell us the story of Synthite. Where does it all begin?
Our story started in 1972 when my father ventured into the processing of spices. There's a story behind that. He was school dropout, went into construction, which was the family business then for him. In 64, he ventured into a chemical business, and he had some contacts with chemical engineers who also gave him some thoughts about processing of various chemicals in the state. He was reasonably successful, and it was in 70 that he got an opportunity to visit Japan. One of the chemical suppliers from Japan gave him the opportunity to be at the Expo 17 in Japan, in Tokyo, where in one of the pavilions, I believe in the American pavilion, he happened to see the liquid spices displayed there, which fascinated him. And a series of events that happened subsequently got him into this business. I would like to narrate that as well because it's very interesting. His cousin, who lived in the US at the time and was teaching in the Mississippi University, coincidentally around the same time sent him a paper article about spices being imported from India, and American companies were processing it there. And he was asking the question, why not this be done in India itself? It was also around the same time the Central Food Research Institute in Mysore, published in the newspaper about they have developed the technology for the distillation of spices and extraction of spices. So all this, like Steve Jobs saying, connecting the dots, he and my dad and his brother ventured into it. They went to Mysore with some spices in their car and, wanting to see how this is being processed. And to their surprise, they could actually see the liquid spices in reality in the Mysore facility of the Central Food Research Institute. Soon they signed an MOU with them and decided to put up a facility. And my dad, since all his career he was away from home, he used to be traveling for the construction. He wanted something very close to home.
Right.
So this current Synthite facility, which is about 500 meters from our home, is where he founded the business way back in 1972.
What did your grandparents do?
My grandfather was in construction. That's why initially when my dad, after his 10 years in school, he decided that he was not studying anymore, started construction, joined his father.
And then he moved away from construction.
In 64, that was an unfortunate situation. His brother-in-law, who was also with them, they both were running the construction business. They were in tunnels and dams. His brother-in-law died in an accident. So that was a big setback for him. And he decided that, he should he didn't move out immediately, but then his eyes were always to move out from that construction business. And that's the beginning of Synthite.
So how old were you around the time that Synthite was getting started, or the early years of Synthite?
I was 8 years old.
Okay. So what recollections do you have about childhood, watching this new venture begin?
Well, till 76, about 3-4 years, they struggled because though the technology which was developed in the lab, which was probably a pilot level, but to scale it, it was a big, huge challenge. And India did not have many technologies to scale up as well. So they struggled for the first 4 years. But in the meantime, very determined Mr. C.V. Jacob made sure that he continued to pursue, and that was his hallmark as well. So he continued to pursue the process, trying to develop. He got some good people, some chemical engineer on board. In 77, he got Dr. James Verghese to work with him. He was a retired professor from the Vellore Medical College, who was in the organic chemistry area. So like that, very early itself, we got good people on board to work on the technical side as well. By 76, 77, they were successful. They started to slowly export products. The big fortune also was that they identified a person in the US who was very familiar in the spice trade, that Mr. Arnold Mannheimer. He facilitated their entry into the US market, got some of the interested companies to come and visit India. And when they saw the opportunity, instead of bulk spices going in containers from here, if you were to, like, typical conversion is 8-10%, so you could reduce the solids by 10%, your shipping costs are less. It is processed, and processed means it is also quality controlled. So some of the companies that encouraged him, gave them the opportunity to work on products. So we started with black pepper and cardamom as the two spices that we started with. So my memories go back to maybe the early 77, 78, when we came back from school during summer holidays, going and spending time in the lab, and spending time at the processing facility. Dad made sure that we were getting familiar. Me and my brother were getting familiar with the business very early. So summer, at least a month we would spend, 20-30 days during the summer holidays we would spend at the factory. So we were very familiar with what happened in the lab and the process. And my dad was also very clear that I should go to do my chemical engineering. And that also helped subsequently after I finished in 86. 87, I joined the business.
I guess history of India is history of children being forced to do engineering.
No,
but in this case, you liked it, I'm
yeah,
sure.
Right. Yeah. And also some direction that is positive. Today, children won't normally accept it, but then I thought it did me good and good the institution. Yeah. It worked well for everyone.
But if you ask me, like most people who end up doing engineering, they do it because they're not very keen to do anything else either.
Right.
And you end up there. How was your engineering? What did you learn there, and how did that tie up with what your company does?
I was an average student. I did pretty well. Again, reasonably well for my caliber, let me honestly say that. And of course, your base in chemical engineering definitely helps. And my project was also, we had to do a project those days. So our project was also about spice extraction. So which got me closer, and we had a couple of chemical engineers who helped me with the project. So that got me a lot more familiarity. The other thing is, around the same time when I was in Bangalore studying, in the Kolar area, we were doing the davana cultivation. Davana is a herb that is grown and distilled for the essential oil, which is used in perfumery. So my dad used to, want me to go to the fields, see the distillation, and come back while I was still in college. And the weekends, occasionally I used to go. It was a 3-month crop, so it didn't take too long. So those weekends I would go and see the farms, the people who were distilling the herbs for us there. So that familiarity with the business is always there, and it was almost a foregone conclusion that after engineering I would join my dad. Though I resisted soon after my engineering, I didn't want to. I thought I should do something else for a while, but then history speaks for itself today.
This is a question that I like to ask. At the time you were in school and in college, in your peer group, what did people aspire to become when they grew up?
No, in fact, in my batch, we were 35 of us. I think 29 or 30 went abroad at that time.
Wow.
So it is only few of us who were from the business background. I know of 4 or 5 of us who went back to work with the family business.
29 out of 35
yes.
Chemical engineers
went abroad at that time.
Great. So now it's the 1980s. So at this point of time, when did you graduate?
I graduated in 86.
In 86. So this is a very important time because India is now moving towards the 1991.
Right.
And that's when you joined the business, I presume, after.
Yeah, 87.
87 is when you joined the business. So can you take us through those early times in terms of what was the business like in the late 80s?
Right.
And then as 1991 happens and the 90s go through, how does doing business change? How do the first signs of growth happen?
When I joined the business, we were about 6-7 crores in turnover. We had by then about 7 or 8 products and good customers, companies that we were actually working with companies who were consuming our products. So we had good relationships there. So good quality product, had a great reputation, had 7-8 products and standardized. So I was coming into a business which was a well-laid foundation was there. So that was, you can't expect anything more than that, right? It was a great foundation. It had a solid business. Business was small, although. So there were a lot of opportunities to improve. That is where some of my chemical engineering helped. The way my dad gave me the freedom to look at things differently, all those helped. And I probably think in about 2 years after I joined, I had a lot of freedom to do what I wanted to do. The only thing, it has to go through the board process, but then that also challenged my assumptions in many ways. But I had a lot of opportunity. A couple of things, inflection points, if I can talk about, or government intervention that helped during that time was, there was a cash assistance that was offered for exports at that time. I think it was in the mid-80s that we got that. That was a big support. The Spice Exporters Forum, which is now called Spice Board, was very, very
the one with the office in Kochi,
yeah. Spices Board.
Right.
Now, it was called Spice Export Promotion Council at that time. They were very, very supportive. There were a couple of officers who really helped, especially in getting new contacts in Europe, and that was another aspect. Another big aspect was the advanced import of spices from across. As we saw in the 80s, the pepper, not necessarily pepper, but nutmegs and a few other spices, though India grew them, there were, Indonesia grew nutmegs, which was cheaper than India, or the qualities were better. Sri Lanka grew pepper, which was again better quality than India. Prices were competitive. So since we were selling into an international market, we had to source most competitively. So when the advanced license was introduced, that allowed us import not paying any duty as long as you value add it and re-export it. So which meant that you were not paying duty and your cash flow being stuck. For a small business, a lot of cash flow being stuck on duties would be a challenge. So that was a big help for the business. Overall for the industry, I would say. So those are three government interventions we can't forget, the organization can't forget. Of course, and then in 91 when the liberalization happened, and especially because we were low in foreign exchange as a country, exports were not taxed. So we had that tax holiday for about 6-7 years, which period we put a lot of money back into the infrastructure. We improved our infrastructure. Since I would say from 87 when I joined the business, in about 5 years or 6 years, we completely revamped the facility that we had and scale it up. So that was one big aspect. Then another big change happened in 89-90 when the paprika, which was traditionally grown in Spain and extracted for the oleoresin for the world market as a food color, Spain had a huge challenge with supplies. The cost was going up and the world was looking for an alternate. So that is when this chili grown in the state of Karnataka became very popular. We identified the opportunity to extract this.
What chili is that? Does it have a particular name?
This is in public called Kashmiri chili, but it is Badgi chili. Or in the original name, it's called Badgi chili, which is grown in that local region.
It's from Karnataka, but it's called Kashmiri.
Kashmiri chilies because it's less pungent and more in color, basically.
Okay.
So we identified the opportunity to extract the color from this and then devoid it of the pungency, the color that you extract. Then you remove the pungency from the color and you eventually have a red liquid which can color food but without any taste of chilies.
Okay.
So, but it was done in a crude way. 89-90 we invested a lot more in the process technology to remove this, in improving the process by which we could extract from chilies and then do the splitting of the color and capsaicin and at scale. I remember in early 90s we processed 3 tons of chili a day. In 2 years' time, we were doing 100 tons a day.
And this was because of a technological upgrade that
and a lot of mechanization. I would not say automation, but
yeah.
Mechanization. So you were not handling, the drying system came up. So everything became confined to a 10-12,000 square feet building where you could do the chili processing prior to extraction.
Where was this machinery coming from?
It was all, India, but nobody had the machine. So we were talking to people who were in grinding machinery business, got them to innovate. We worked with customize. They made the equipment. They were also first in the game. And that is where initially most of what we Synthite processed or the equipment that we used for process was either made at Synthite or exclusively made for Synthite because you don't have ready-made technology available at that time.
So whenever you Google Synthite, it says world's largest exporter of value-added spices, oleoresins, etc., etc. Let's take some time and explain to me what exactly is an oleoresin.
If I could explain using these products, it'll be easier. So I would classically use black pepper as an example.
Okay.
So black pepper, if you take black pepper and just crush in your hand, you get an aroma. That's because of the volatile oil in it, which is this product.
So inside that jar of black pepper, that physical thing when crushed, that's just the oil out of that?
No, crushed and then steamed. Okay. So the essential oil is derived through steam distillation, which is the volatile component. And then you separate the water and the oil. The oil is then what gives you the aroma of the spice. It doesn't have any taste principles. It only gives the aroma of pepper.
Okay.
And then the same biomass from which you have extracted the oil or distilled the oil is subjected to a solvent extraction.
Okay.
An organic solvent is used to extract, where your active principles which gives you the taste is isolated from it, which we call the resin. So the resin gives you the taste, the oil gives you the flavor. Then you combine the two, the oil and the resin together, what we call oleoresin, which gives you the complete taste and flavor of the spice.
Both these together is the oleoresin?
Yeah, both. This is the oleoresin, which is a combination of the resin and the oil.
And the oil, and that is just
the oil.
Just the oil. So this one has the components of taste and aroma, I presume. This is only aroma.
Only aroma.
And who is buying this stuff? Who is buying the product on the left? Who is buying the product on the right? What is it being used for?
Right. So the aroma is used in any application where you want the pepper aroma. It could even be a perfumery product. to a food product where they want some pepper notes, but not necessarily the pepper bite, because the bite in that is coming from maybe from chilies or for some other spice, but they want a pepper aroma. Whereas typically in savory products where you want pepper notes, you would use an oleoresin, which goes into making the flavor that's used in a food, which gives you the taste and the flavor. Typically, mostly in the processed meat areas where we would use black pepper.
At what point do you start expanding abroad? I read online that you had started setting up factories and production facilities and this thing abroad. So when does that begin?
Like the business started with exports, because the processed food industry in India was very nascent, and it was only in the 2000s or mid 2000s that Indian industry started to grow. So initial, maybe till about 2004-5, 95% of our production was exported, because there didn't exist a market for these products in India. And when we started seeing opportunities as we saw size, for example, when we went to China in 2011, the same paprika, which was a big boon for our industry in the 90s, China started to grow paprika in a much bigger way. They were growing varieties that were significantly higher in quality, and naturally we had to go and source, because paprika being a big product for us. So we decided to go to China where it's grown and started to process there. There were industries there, but we thought we should be on our own, because our customers preferred to buy products that is made by Synthite, and that's what we pride in. So we decided to go and put up a facility in China. Subsequently in Vietnam for black pepper, and Sri Lanka for pepper, and a few other products that we went. Now there are other few destinations that we are looking at. As and when we see there's a sizable volume of product being imported from a location, and it made sense as to be processing locally, we have gone to destinations where it's grown.
But the sort of brain center of the whole enterprise is
Kerala.
Is in Kerala. Let's talk about the R&D aspect of things. Another aspect about your company that keeps coming up when we read about it is how much research and development is central to your success. Can you break that down for me? What does that mean in operational terms?
Early on, as I mentioned, a lot of the R&D or development was on the process side, because we got a very rudimentary process from CFTRI, so we had to keep refining it. So that is where a lot of the technological development happened, which had to combine both with efforts in the lab as well as in the scale up in production. So technology evolved around that, and so we had chemical engineers and people in the chemists in the lab working towards it. And for us to be known in the world, we had to have some unique development that was happening in the lab, where Dr. James Surgis, as I mentioned earlier, was very instrumental in making sure that we had a lot of publications on various products that we were doing. So we were consistently being seen in international magazines in terms of technology developments and process capabilities and the product. One other aspect is also that all of these spices have hundreds of components in it. This pepper oil would, if you do a gas chromatography of this essential oil, you would get about 50, 60 or maybe 100 different components. Now each of it has its own function. So to go do a little more deep dive understanding of each of those and how that enables pepper oil to be of that quality. So we did a lot of work on that at the lab level, so that how we can differentiate our product and also do some isolation work. So that is where the initial R&D was. Then the subsequent challenge or opportunity was, as the world started moving towards more cleaner products, which today is becoming big. We started very early. People wanted products that are processed without any solvents. So today you can make a black pepper oleoresin without using a solvent. You can use supercritical CO2 to extract. Or you could have Synthite as a patented technology where we use what we call straights, which is used for extracting the color from the paprika without using any solvent. So those technologies became very popular. Now they've become popular, but these investments we made way back in the 2000-2010 period, where we were working on both on the technology and the science side of extracting isolation. So today, I would say in terms of processing capabilities of clean label ingredients, Synthite would be I'm sure the number one company worldwide in terms of the different technologies that we have in isolating spice extracts or plant extracts without using any solvents, or what we call the clean label. So that was one part of the research which mostly happened between, I would say, 95 and 2010. Then we started looking at technologies like fermentation, which probably in the next 15-20 years would be big, because a lot of these active molecules today that you're isolating from a spice or a plant could be made by fermentation process, where you have a carbon source, you have the microorganisms working in the fermenter, and you can make the flavor. To give you an example, from rice bran you isolate ferulic acid, and then ferulic acid in a biofermenter using microorganisms can be converted to vanillin. So you get a vanilla flavor or a vanillin by this bioconversion. There's no chemicals being used. It's still called natural, or EU natural, it's EU compliant. So in the future, a lot of these molecules could come through that process. The other interesting source for natural ingredients would be algae. A lot of the algae, I think in the world there are about 1,600 different algae, but only 40-50 are being commercially explored today. Where, like for example, the blue color, which is phycocyanin, comes from an algae called spirulina. So we developed the technology to do a process where an organic compliant extraction can be done. So even beta carotene, which is a natural color, can be made from algae. So a lot of technologies around, processing ingredients from algae is a technology. So what I see as the future opportunities in terms of whether it's fermentation, algae-based extracts, or clean label, we are pretty active in all the three spaces, which could be disruption. Like any industry, there's a lot of disruption happening. In our space of flavors and fragrance, the disruption opportunities, at least we are there in all of these. We have front-ended, or we are actively there in all of these technologies.
So what's the educational background of the people who are working for you? Which sector and across how many disciplines are you attracting people to work for you?
Today, in terms of the process, it's chemical engineering, mechanical engineering work is good. Then in chemistry, we mostly look at MSc chemistry, biochemistry, organic chemistry, depending on what stream we're working on. Very interestingly, I thought I should mention it here. We've been working on a particular product from green coffee for a world-renowned coffee company. I don't want to name it at this point, but it took us 6 years to get there. But, it was only 2 days back we cracked that opportunity and we made the product. They gave us a brief. We did a lot of iterations, but they were very specific about what needed to be done. But we persisted on it for 6 years. And 2018 is when we got the brief. It was only 2 days back we got a major order, which is like, at its full potential, could be several $1 million. The first order itself is about $4 million. So that is the kind of opportunity that you can create purely because a lot of companies are looking, at least in the food space, health and wellness space, is looking for natural ingredients. Though these could also be made chemically, people want to look at natural ingredients because of the naturalness, especially post-COVID. People want to do, everyone wants to eat healthy and eat natural ingredients. Mostly people are looking at even antimicrobials, antifungal ingredients, antioxidants. You can make chemical ingredients for all of this, but people want to move to natural. So that is where the natural ingredient opportunity in the future is significant.
You said this thing took you 6 years to crack. Yeah. And without revealing what you're not comfortable revealing, but can you tell us what kind of brief you get? How do you start working on it? Why aren't you giving up by year 3 or year 4? Can you just chart that journey for us?
Yeah. We got the brief that, there are a couple of ingredients in coffee that is very special. But when you roast coffee and then extract, the coffee flavor comes. So they wanted these ingredients isolated when it's in the green form itself.
Before roasting?
Before roasting.
Okay.
So that when you extract, you don't get the coffee flavor. There's no coffee flavor in it at all. It is for those active ingredients from coffee. So it had to be from a named source. So even if you're boosting the active ingredients in, maybe not necessarily in coffee, but also in other beverages, they didn't want the coffee flavor to come, but these active ingredients to kick in that application. So it meant that the variety of coffee being used, the process being used, which had to be organically compliant, they wanted a product in a certain liquid format. So all this took not only the process capability, but also the technology to preserve it. We had to make an extract which retained a lot of water in it, and to be able to transport across the ocean. So we had to create a understanding and technology to preserve that product in that state. So it meant a lot of activities to get to the final product. So that's why it took such a long time. But again, it was for a major coffee company, so it had to be perfect. They had to be sure of everything. But ultimately it's worked.
Can you tell me some more examples of things that have happened in the lab that have translated? Because you've obviously added product upon product to your initial catalog.
Right.
Can you think of some instances where particular breakthroughs in the lab translated into huge gains commercially? One was the paprika example that you mentioned. That was one.
Yeah, paprika is one. Chilies, which was not traditionally used, we were able to convert that. A herb called rosemary, which again India doesn't grow much, so we have to import. So there is 3-4 different antioxidant components in that.
In rosemary.
So isolating each of them separately. One component is oil soluble, the other part is water soluble. So being able to isolate them separately so that you have an antioxidant for water soluble applications, you have an antioxidant for oil soluble applications. And again, because most of the processed food industry today does not want to use synthetic. And again, then you make that products functional for each of the different applications is very, very interesting. And today, again, the Trump administration is looking at banning natural synthetic colors in the US.
Right.
Which would be the next big thing. If that change does happen into 27, 28, then it would open up a lot of opportunity for, again, replacing synthetic colors with natural colors won't be that straightforward. Color, physically you would get it, but in terms of stability, cost and use. So being able to make natural, but being able to make it cost effectively would be the next big thing. So we are doing a lot of work on that, in that direction.
Let's move to your recent support for university department in Kerala. So now this is where R&D is going out of the factory or out of your company purely into an academic space.
Right.
Tell me what brought that about. Why did you move into investing in a university? What outcomes are you looking at? Tell us about that.
As I mentioned earlier, the bio manufacturing is a future in many areas. In pharma, it's very big today, already very big today. It's coming in our space. So looking at biomanufacturing, which again is very, very high tech. So today we don't have, if you look at India, in the biomanufacturing, in the pharma space, there's a lot of people. But in terms of other areas, we don't have enough people with understanding on the biomanufacturing or synthetic biology and biomanufacturing. And the technology with computational biology getting better and, the computer systems getting better, the iterations can be much faster in terms of product development. What it took about 7-8 years for a biotransformation product in the past, today it can be 2-3 years, provided you have the right people. So Kerala, I believe the future for Kerala would be in knowledge-based industries, and having technology and people develop for that technology would be very important. So that's why Synthite invested in the C.V. Jacob Center for Synthetic Biology and Biomanufacturing, which is a department by itself in Cochin University, which is fully autonomous to run the program. University supporting all the university aspects, but the program itself is designed by the center. We've got a good team of professors to start working, and this year we're going to start the first MTech program in synthetic biology and biomanufacturing, which will be the first one in India for that matter.
Okay. Let's move to the state of Kerala, and each business is obviously a product of its own environment, and the different strengths or weaknesses of a place would contribute towards the success or failure of a business. So what aspects about doing business in Kerala, people, society, all of those things, what part of that mix helped Synthite grow?
I would say the people competence for sure was one aspect. That's why all of our research and development and products which are highly technical in nature is still processed in Kerala. We've moved to other states of Karnataka or Andhra, even in China, where purely because of scale, we have gone to those regions and processing it. But then all of the product development, process development, and scale up happens in Kerala. And of the say 7 or 8 products that we process outside of Kerala, the rest of the 300-400 spices still gets processed in Kerala, purely because of the technology involved, the people competence that are required to process is required. And again, as I mentioned earlier, all of this technical development happens in Kerala, purely because of the competence of the people. Of course, you would get a few technical people from outside, but most of the other people, support staff, and the people who work in development are from Kerala.
So clearly, the biggest strength here is human capital.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going forward also, like, Kerala's opportunity, because when you look at all the constraints of Kerala as a state, with water on one side and the forest on the other side, and with limited land available, I think Kerala should pursue knowledge-based industries. If at all if you pursue industry, then it should be more about the tourism, healthcare. And recently, I was like, if you look at the investment that's being made in the healthcare today in Kerala, people see an opportunity where health tourism could be an opportunity. Tourism itself is a great opportunity. So we should more adapt ourselves to support industries that are viable for the state, rather than maybe brooding about some big manufacturing opportunity that Kerala missed. I don't think that in any case people would not prefer, because of the limitation on land and a few other aspects that is not very positive about Kerala. But there are many other aspects that's positive. I think we should play to our strength than our weakness.
True, because even I feel that Kerala tourism, for instance, Kerala doesn't have a Taj Mahal, right? It doesn't have a Taj Mahal, but the backwater, the hills, the tea gardens, that is Kerala's Taj Mahal. And if that has to be preserved, you can't have polluting industries in the vicinity. And so it's not just a decision of environmental activism. It's also a very strategic, self-interested decision that if you want to preserve the environment, which then translates to a good chunk of your GDP, you also cannot encourage large industries the way that other states do.
It has to be a very conscious call in that respect.
When you look back at, say, the past 20-30 years, like, what kind of opportunities do you think are there today for students, young people in Kerala that, say, were not available? I'm asking this in the context of the migration out of Kerala is obviously a major point of conversation. So I think what I'm trying to find out from you is, when you look at the past, say, 20-30 years, are there more opportunities there today? And if so, like, where do you think that young people here, what areas can they look at? What could their focus be if they want to start something of their own here?
Now, I would say, that, first is about children coming out of colleges, graduates or postgraduates coming out, definitely need to gain some experience. So starting out from college, or starting out from, as a starter from college, is a possibility. I'm not saying that it's not a possibility, but that is far and few. You take hundreds of people trying that out, and then maybe you hear of a few success, and we celebrate the success, but you're not looking at how many are failing or not being able to pursue it because of the lot of constraints. So ideally, people getting an opportunity to work somewhere, develop their understanding, and then getting into a particular business or pursuing it, or even as a professional doing well, also makes a difference. If you look at organizations where people have grown up the ladder from, for example, we have our potential CIO who came as a computer operator and gone up to the CIO level. So you can grow within an organization also, not necessarily being an entrepreneur. Your value addition can happen through that. So businesses or individuals should look at growing by exposing themselves, learning, and taking challenges and being entrepreneurial in the process. So one of the things that I do personally is, in the last 8 years, have had 4 executive assistants. My target is none of them should stay with me for more than 2 years. In 2 years, they should become exposed enough that they can run a part of the business, and which I've successfully done with 4 of them. And the 5th executive assistant is with me. So all of them have got different career paths compared to, they are all from B schools. They were willing to come and work with me. So they exposed themselves and they got the opportunity. And today they become entrepreneurs within the organization. Not necessarily entrepreneur, but entrepreneur in that respect. And, I'm sure it's a fulfilling experience for people. So it doesn't have to be all people who are startups and doing businesses, even otherwise people can make careers.
You don't have to begin with the hustle.
Yeah.
Get experience.
Yes.
Be entrepreneurial within a controlled environment.
Yes.
And
then you can pursue, or there are companies that today allow you to do that, right?
Right. You were saying that Synthite exports to more than 80 countries across the globe. This would require dealing with people all over the world. How do you manage to do that?
More than being a very marketing savvy, it's more being true and, being consistent with your product, consistent with your service. And it's not being flashy that Synthite has ever been successful with. We've done well because we have been committed to the product quality, committed to the to price and sensitivities. And today, everyone talks about ESG. Today, any company and the large companies that buying from us, because they're supplying into the food companies that are very big. So naturally, ESG becomes a significant portion. So one is product, price, and ESG becomes equal aspects, 1/3. So we are very committed to the ESG practice, ensuring that, whatever we supply, how much impact we are making on the environment, what are the social aspects that we need to be pursuing. All those things are being very actively monitored, which gives our customers a lot of confidence. So it is through that. And again, if you look at the major flavor houses or seasoning houses of health and wellness companies that worldwide, we are working with at least 4 or 5 of them in each of these segments, and very closely for a very long period of time.
Okay. Does being a Malayali help in dealing with global clients? The reason I'm asking is Malayalis have been able to go all over the world. They've been able to succeed everywhere in areas all the way from Japan to the United States, Europe, the Middle East. So the values or the temperament that Malayalis have, does that help you deal with global clients better?
I think, we may not be the best business people, but, in terms of the overall, approach that Malayalis have, I think the Europeans, especially Japanese, I think when we work with, the level of loyalty that we have with our Japanese customers, we don't have anywhere else, because of the fact that it takes a few years to build a business with them, but as long as you are consistent with them, you don't lose them as a client. So those are things where I think our nature of not being too aggressive, pays for itself.
Right. You were heading CII at some point.
Yes.
And you know that Kerala sort of carries this impression of a place that's hard to do business in, and you are representing a premier body of business persons. So when you encounter these hesitations or these concerns about Kerala, what is your usual response to that, considering how successful you guys have been?
One was showcasing ourselves and the other fellow industries that were part of the CIA on how we've been successful in this country. So definitely that was, we ourselves as ambassadors of business from Kerala could speak for itself. And one other thing that we also looked at is how can we, rather than doing a lot of events, get more people into specific areas of focus where, CIA always had a tourism exhibition or an event, then health and wellness, and then Ayurveda. So I, insist on we combining all the three, because it merited combining all these 3 disciplines together, so that it became. And then when we went to the international embassies or went abroad to meet with people, they welcomed it. And in fact, the last edition of this event had hundreds of people coming from abroad, seeing the value in coming to Kerala for health tourism.
What would you say to, Indian or global investors who are considering Kerala but are still hesitant to come here?
Again, it depends on what industry. And, like if I again recall what I've heard recently, how IBM or a lot of the software companies are investing big time in terms of quality people, where they have research and development being done, or new areas of work where there is I believe ENY is substantially expanding in Kerala because of the people strength. They have moved, I would not say moving away from Bangalore, but looking at Kerala seriously because of the quality of the people. So again, the focus has to be purely based on quality of the people, training them and coming up to speed. So I would say that people who are rushing abroad today and what quality of life eventually they're getting, if the people who went earlier on or who are very, very skilled in a particular area versus an average student going abroad, I don't think long term would make sense. They would be much better off if they have to maybe grind a little longer in India, but then eventually they would, or Kerala would give them a better or more successful or more meaningful life in the future.
Let's talk a little bit about societal mindset towards business. Have you seen a change in that over the past few decades?
Significant. I remember, I have a classic example. I remember we bought a company that was closed down in Calicut because at some point in the early 90s, we needed a lot of capacity. There was an existing extraction facility in Calicut, so we decided to go and buy that facility. So while I had gone to visit the facility and I was walking around, the neighbor walked by and he asked me, "Oh, you guys are going to buy this to make profits." So that was the kind of impression people had. It was in Calicut. It was a rundown company. It was closed. So we were happy to go and start the facility again and give work to people. But the neighbor had a very different opinion about it. But that's changing today. Today we are celebrating businesses and appreciate or acknowledging people have done very well. So things have definitely changed.
So looking ahead, what do you think Kerala's business community should prioritize over, the next decade?
What we have seen is also the fact that there's a lot of connect with the social environment around you. You can't be completely disconnect yourself and try to grow. For example, if you look at where we come from, I think right from my father's days, now with me, my brother, we all of us very, very connected to the society around us. Whether it's schools, colleges, medical college, or the other social activities around us. So I don't think, unlike being in other cities or big city, metro cities of the country or internationally, I think Kerala is much more social connect is also equally important, so that you're not distancing yourself once you become a businessman and you are at a certain level. Because the socially also, I don't think there's so much of a difference. So acknowledging people around you, and appreciating the fact that you were lucky to be growing maybe a little faster than your fellow human beings, and being considerate is very, very important. Then you are acknowledged.
That's a very important component of thriving in Kerala, and it's also a very egalitarian society. I was wondering, because sometimes when I'm traveling, when I'm outside the country, or you read about incidents and politics outside the country where the criticism flies free and fast.
Right.
A lot of that resembles the state of Kerala in terms of how egalitarian it is, and I think how outspoken people are. Do you think that helps when you're dealing with people from other places?
You've already dealt with all of this in Kerala because of that. So it becomes a little more easier that way. But there are certain mindsets that also need to change, because again, if I could explain a classic example, Synthite was founded, as I told you, in 72 in a small town of Kaderip. It was in 2011-12 that we decided to build our corporate house about 500 meters from where our factory is. We started, were getting the permits, trying to get the electrical connection. We had to run that construction site 6 months with a generator. But it was the same time we were in China establishing a facility in a very remote village, because that's where the paprika is grown. So there was not many industries there. But there's an institution, like a panchayat-like institution there. They had a huge hall. So when we went there and we were establishing ourselves, before we had anything on the ground, they vacated a large room for us to be seated there. They equipped with computers and seat arrangements for us to operate from there. So that, they were about maybe 100 meters from our facility where we were building our facility. So the kind of support that came from government versus what happened here it was a bit of a challenge. So what I would like to say is that the government machinery also needs to start appreciating that and supporting it in all respects. So that it becomes, much more easier for people, like today we talk about single window clearance and things like that, which should literally be single window clearance, so that people don't have to run from pillar to post to get things done.
Right. In fact, that was the question that I was coming to in terms of expectations from government. since you are also a board member of KSIDC, what do you think KSIDC's priorities should be?
KSIDC should function as a policy maker, supporting, like we had a great Invest Kerala program, and we are constantly monitoring how it's progressing. We know that there are good percentage of conversion that's possible from the statistics or the data that we are seeing. So how can we facilitate? In fact, that's what I think one of the meetings I suggested, that let's get at least a few started so that people start feeling confident, okay, coming through the program. We got a lot of support from the government in establishing, and once they start talking about their stories, the others will start feeling confident about. So that single window approach, where it could be some issue with the land conversion or it could be something else, those minor things, if they can get it done faster, and KSIDC as an institution can facilitate that, it would make a huge difference.
I agree.
Maybe not large policy decisions, but at least the small ones which are easy to crack, or the low-hanging fruits, as we say, if you could help facilitate that, that would make a huge difference.
Can you talk a little bit about the kind of work culture that you guys have at your company? What are you consciously working on in terms of work culture, HR?
When we started, the one DNA that we would not like to lose, and from its beginning, was being very agile. It's not a lot about process, but being agile. Because when we saw an opportunity, hit hard, make sure that you convert that into that opportunity into a product, and eventually into a business. So that is something, as the institution grows, it gets lost, because people come up and people become an issue because of the fact that, how do you get smart people to work together is a challenge. So how do we ensure that processes are in place to making people work together, at the same time not losing agility, because the agility or the speed, because one thing I can with all humility say, a lot of Synthite's growth has come through pull opportunities, where customers have come and given us project, like the earlier project that I mentioned, because people have come to us and said, okay, can you develop this for us? These are an opportunity to work on it. And how soon we have converted in the past is the reason why people come to us. The base of that is being agile, being fast to convert, and going out of the way to get things done. So that has been the DNA. It's not a lot about, completely new inventions from Synthite. So a lot of this is the technology innovations have happened when we got an opportunity as well. I would say it's quite a large percentage would be that. So that is something that I would not like to lose as our organization, not lose is the agility, despite it becoming a larger organization, professionally run, but ideally keep that original DNA of being agile.
So coming back to your sort of global network, you're dealing with people from all over the world. What are some of the things we can learn from people abroad? So you've dealt with Japanese people, you've dealt with Germans, you've dealt with people from Brazil, you have centers all over the world. So what have you picked up from their different styles of functioning and the styles of doing business?
In our industry, because we are supplying ingredients to the food, the quality has to be, especially when it comes to Europeans, especially the Germans or the Swiss, which they are big flavor fragrance companies based there. The precision on quality is very, very important. Being consistent is very, very important. And looking at long term is also very important for them. So that is again where I think we have been successful, because we've had the patience to work with them, be willing to forego some profits to ensure that all aspects that they want is taken care. And once we have done that for a few years and you build confidence with them, then it's easy for us to work with them, and then they also take you as a partner. And that is where we have seen a lot of the big flavor fragrance companies globally are based in Europe, and we have excellent relationship with them because of that. And also because they also try to, in a way, give you more opportunities when that happens, once you see that you're very committed to it. And then they're willing to work along with you, support you quite a bit. And the amount of knowledge transfer that happens in that process is significant. So a lot of learning happens from them. That I've seen mostly with the Europeans, especially the Germans, Swiss countries, and also in Japan also. Like even in working with Japanese companies, because they are very, very precise on quality, they also make sure that even there are, in the earlier days, that they used to insist on me being present in some of the sensory testing time and all that. Even if you have best of people sitting there, they want me also to be involved so that I also understand the significance of the quality. So to that extent, a lot of learning happens working with these people, and naturally that then becomes your DNA to some extent, and then you start driving that in your organization, which is very, very important in a food industry, because the ingredients that we supply are very sensitive. This is being used in food, and also now in the health and wellness industry, and a little bit into pharma. So the quality requirements are very, very high.
Can you talk about some instances in your life which you would define as times of crises, failures, and how you overcame them?
I often talk about this particular instance in 92, when we had a lot of demand. We had to build capacity immediately, but on scouting for opportunity, see whether there was any facility available, we identified an opportunity in Calicut. So we went and did some job work there for some time. It was a factory that was under the BIFR, and they were closing down. So due to the pressure from the local people, the people working there, we decided to buy the facility. There was some lack of understanding in terms of the facilities that we had. The product that we processed, job work did work, but overall the facility had some challenges. So when we bought the company and then started to process a few other products, because of the way the facility was built, it was not fully stainless steel, and so for that reason, it had some reaction with our product, and some product quality issues happened. So I was 26 at that time, 26, 27 at that time. It was my initiative to buy the facility. Of course, the organization approved it, the board approved it. So we took it over from the bank. But because of this particular issue, we had to fix it. So I was trying to find a short-term fix for it. And it was honestly a desperate situation for me personally. But I remember my dad telling me, you made the mistake, and I still remember him telling me, even if your finger is rotting, maybe you have to cut it off, and maybe not fix it, but cut it off, so that the rest of the body doesn't have that problem. So literally we had to strip down a lot of the facilities that we had and rebuild it, which for me at that age was a great support from my dad. Had he said something else or moved in a different direction, probably today, whatever risk appetite that I have would never have been there. I would have lost it completely there. So it was a great moral support. And for the business also, subsequently, we changed everything. That factory, we owned it till 2017. We sold it later, but it operated for about 18, 20 years very successfully. So that was, for me, something that I can't forget. So I keep, to that extent, sometimes I feel that am I that patient with the people that I work with? Sometimes I'm not, but that was a significant personal experience for me.
Wonderful. Whenever we talk about growing businesses, at least in theory, or growing a state's economy, one term that keeps coming up is we need industry academia collaboration. I think this is talked about more than it actually happens. And you guys are a company which has really benefited from this. What would you tell people in industry today and people in academia today? How do we reach our maximum potential in industry academia collab? How do we make that happen at a more serious, systematic way going forward? Like, what steps can businesses take? What does academia need to do? Can the government play some sort of a role? Can you talk about that in a bit?
So today, because this is in vogue, people are talking about it. There's a lot of discussion happening. There are a number of colleges that are approaching us to sign an MOU, but that all remains like an MOU. I don't think it really works. There are two things that the industry should be doing. One is if you identify a problem, be willing to give it, not expecting a solution sometimes. Maybe you have to fund it a bit. What happens so that is, at least the children or the professor working on it starts to learn about a industry issue. They may not be able to find a solution immediately for you, but that culture starts to happen. Maybe that will take maybe several years for it to get established in an institute, that they can actually work and find a solution to a problem. So expecting results from day one, and you don't want to share your problems because you feel it's very proprietary to you, and someone else don't want to know about it, is not going to work. So if you're willing to throw challenges at people, even something that you may be easy ones, the low hanging fruits, where ultimately we are going to discuss this with a professor and students who are much junior, right? So not that expecting results. So we have to definitely identify opportunities, give them problems, challenges, work with them. In some years, a culture will develop in institutions. So, for example, with the Muthoot Institute of Engineering College, we have, since I'm in their, larger board, we have shared a problem with them. Plucking flowers from jasmine is a manual effort, and today, more than the cost of growing the flower, it's a plucking that makes it more expensive. So can we automate it? So we funded that small project there. They made some prototypes using a computer arm, that robotic arm that can go and pick flowers. They have gone through the first stage of second stage of prototyping is complete. And now we can probably do some scale-up trials. So in that, I'm not expecting a solution coming from them 100%, but at least the children who have worked on it, the professor who has worked on it and supported that development, they have seen the real life problem rather than just some book learning. So that is one aspect to it. It's not all about solutions, and definitely the institutes that come up and consistently do it over the years, I'm sure they will have a well-established team that can actually go into problems and find solutions, is what I feel. It is a culture that has to be developed. Overnight success can't be expected. Signing MOUs may not be the only, that you can have it for the sake of saying that you have an MOU with an institute.
You can have a photo up, but then for actual results?
Absolutely. And don't expect results immediately.
You have to take risks.
Absolutely.
And this is not a massive risk.
Yeah, right.
Among all the risks that a business usually has to take. From the side of academia, what would you like them to do to sort of lessen that gap? You said what industry should do. What would your expectations be on the side of?
Once they take up a problem, they should be willing to spend quality time on it. And again, on their side also, again, even if they're not finding a solution, they're letting the children think out of their box, out of their regular syllabus, to look at something as an issue. I'm sure more readings happen because of that, more knowledge sharing happens, and some experiments. And sometimes purely out of serendipity, they might find something new also. So we should allow that opportunity to happen.
It could be a solution to a problem you don't have right now.
Absolutely. Could be something new.
Something completely new can come out of it. Great. Having been in the business community for the past nearly 4 decades now.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, what sets a Kerala business apart from others? What is the Kerala way of doing business? If I were to ask you that question, what would be the elements that would animate a Kerala business? What would you say? What are the defining characteristics?
One thing I feel is, we are not always looking at what is in it for me. It's a little more patient to work with people and develop something, and knowing very well that, it'll turn around and it'll give you an opportunity to make business. Compared to many other communities, it's always about what is in it for me. Versus we being, I would say, completely opposite to that. We are much more patient in learning, developing, and co-producing something, and eventually, as they succeed, we also hope to succeed along with them. So that is definitely something that I've generally noticed, and that's something which we also practice, because not everything that we do, we're expecting it to make money from day one. We're willing to wait it out, make sure that what we have developed is succeeding for them, and in the process, we're becoming a partner in that success.
All right. So you have some products in front of you. Can you take us through the other 3? There's this tall bottle, and then next to it, what are we looking at? Yeah, right. What is this? Where is it sold? Tell us about the story behind these two.
When we started looking at new products, and we started developing a lot of new products. Especially now, this is a jalapeno extract. The story behind it is when we developed a jalapeno extract, we were trying to sell that product, but ultimately we were not able to create a lot of interest. So again, for this is the chipotle, the Mexican chili extract. So the guy who heads our chief development officer, he said, why don't we start a brand which will be like an experimental brand. Don't expect that to grow high, but then put these products in application so that we can at least show to our customers that these are products that can be used in applications like these. So this was started purely based on that effort. Sprig as a brand, which is primarily today a high value gourmet ingredients, which primarily were imported into India, is being replaced by products produced here. So this started with an idea of as I said, using our products in application and demonstrating to people. And today it's become a brand on its own and a life on its own.
Where do you ship these items to, these particular ones? For instance, where does the jalapeno...
Today they're sold in the India market. India, like we sell in the modern retail and online. So we have, similar to this, we have a brand of chocolate called Paul and Mike, which again is, Vikas, who himself calls the founder and CEO of that brand, which we are happy to support that claim. He was my executive assistant. So we were exploring cocoa extracts, and we found the opportunity that the chocolate consumption in India is low. The gourmet chocolates all coming into India were from international brands coming in, like the people like Godiva. And why can't we make a chocolate as good as Godiva? That was his main theme. So which meant that you had to start from the cocoa bean fermentation, the roasting, so complete value chain. So today it's the bean to bar product, Paul and Mike, where we completely handle the beans right from fermentation to roasting and making your own chocolate base, and then adding inclusions to make not any flavors, mostly inclusions. And most of our products have 45-50% cocoa in it, and cocoa butter, and no other fat. So it's a very clean gourmet chocolates.
Great. Which product of yours are you proudest of?
Among the retail brand, of course, the chocolates are great, but among the Sprig brand, the range of vanilla products, we are as good as any international brand.
Young aspiring entrepreneurs in the state today who are just starting off their business journeys, what would your advice be to them that can see them through, say, the first 5 to 7 years of being in business?
Resilience, hard work. My daughter herself has got a personal care brand called Gunam. She is on social media very active, and the effort that she's putting in, or let me not qualify that way, because the resilience, the willingness to, of course, you might, when we figure it out as a business and see the opportunity and look at all the numbers, you're confident that in 2 or 3 years it'll break even, start to make profits, but that's not the reality. So one thing is, of course, you got to have people to support you financially, but as long as you're resilient, committed, and hardworking, in 4 or 5 years you can convert ideas into business and opportunities, and then a profitable or a successful business. But that resilience and commitment should be there, and hard work.
So final question: if you were starting off today, if you were starting off today in the state of Kerala, what sector would you be looking at? If you didn't have this chemical engineering background, just purely from your knowledge about the Kerala economy, what areas would you be exploring in order to start off a new business in?
I'm very convinced that Kerala can only do something that's technology based, or so I'll have to definitely look at opportunities around how we can use the competence of people here. If it's a people-based industry that you look at, then that's one area. Then the other aspect is, how can we explore the nature more, not exploit, explore the nature more, and be a natural products company still has opportunities. So that's a space which, again, I may be biased because I'm coming from a certain background, but I think that's where the opportunity is.
Great. I think
thank you.
that brings us to the end. So Thank you very much.
Right, thanks.
Thanks.